Hello, I'm Samantha Smiley. I'm the state education reporter for Chalkbeat Chicago. Welcome to our inaugural school board candidate forum. These are conversations with the people running in Chicago's historic first school board elections. And welcome to anyone tuning in live at our YouTube channel. If you have any questions for the candidates, please type them into the comments and we will do our best to get to them. So we're very happy to welcome the candidates of District 9. First off will be Michael Lewis. He currently works as Acting Director and Chief Probation Officer for Cook County Juvenile Probation and Court Services. He is the only candidate who has already served on the Chicago Board of Education. He was appointed by Mayor Lori Lightfoot early in 2023 and stayed on for a short period of time until Mayor Brandon Johnson came into office. Next is Lamont Raymond Williams. Williams is a Southsider who attended Chicago Public Schools while growing up. He currently works as Chief of Staff and General Counsel for Cook County Commissioner Bill Lowry. He isn't new to politics. Williams ran against Willie Preston for the Illinois State Senate District 16 seat. Next, we have Lynetta Thomas, who has a very long bio, but what I put here today was she's an Army veteran and a community organizer with Southsiders Organized for Unity and Liberation, otherwise known as SOUL. She's a CPS parent, and she's attending school herself. She's enrolled at Chicago State University and Governor State University. Therese Bull was invited to join us, but declined our invitation to participate in today's forum. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so we have an icebreaker just to get things started. So the first question for you all is, what was your favorite and least favorite subject in school? And we're gonna go this way. So you can start, Michael.
Okay, yeah, interesting question because my response to that question is the exact same class. My favorite subject became my favorite subject sometime during the semester. It was not my favorite subject to start, and what I'm speaking about is calculus. Proud alumni of the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences, and their focus was on sciences and math. And it was this particular course, the calculus course, that was giving me a real tough time. And it also taught me that I had to just really focus, right? Give real attention to the course because it didn't come so easy. And it was because I had to really dig in and find another gear, so to speak, that it became my favorite course after I got an A on an exam. So that gave me that real boost of confidence, right? It started that it was really challenging. I didn't like it because it was so challenging, but encouragement from my parents and just finding that next level of commitment to the class, it became my favorite class.
I think that's the first time somebody said that today. What about you, Lamont?
Their least favorite was also their favorite. My most favorite class, that I had throughout my entire academic journey through CPS has to be social studies. So I want to give a special shout out to my 4th grade social studies teacher, Mr. Cahill. If you're watching this, thank you so much. Because whenever we did well on an exam, he would, I don't know if you can do this now, CPS might be a legal liability, but he would lift us up over his head in our chairs and parade us around the classroom, and everybody would celebrate. So I always wanted to make sure I did well in my social studies. And I love history to this day because of that. Least favorite? Calculus. and particularly, it was calculus, I think they call it calculus BC at Lincoln Park when I was in IB program. Yeah, that was the moment I realized I was not gonna become a great mathematician. I leaned heavily back into history and science. So calculus BC was the bane of my academic journey.
What about you, Lynette?
I guess we all are adversaries to math. My least favorite subject was algebra. It's because I'm neurodiverse. So they used to give us examples with apples and oranges, and I did not understand what that had to do with numbers. So once I realized how to get algebra, of course I got it, but for a long time my mama would give me all these like study materials and all these things for algebra, And it always would give me examples with apples, oranges, and that didn't make sense to me because it was not what we were, that did not come up with the answer for me personally. My favorite subject, which actually helped me with algebra and math and memory and just life altogether, is music. It's one of the hardest subjects in the world. I took my favorite, I had Mr. Key at Percy L. Julian and Mr. Cooper at Percy L. Julian. I was actually on the marching band at Percy L. Julian all 4 years, even when I had to transition because I was missing a half a credit. That's the only reason why I didn't end up graduating from Julian, because I was missing a half a credit for some reason. But I stayed on the marching band all 4 years. And even in college, I went to Chicago State University, and I was on the Marching Soul marching band at Chicago State University as well. So music is my favorite subject because it actually grounds me. It helps with my memory. It helps, being a neurodiverse person, music is very good for me.
I like that. Okay, so there's a lot going on when it comes to news in Chicago. This is probably one of the wildest news weeks that we've had. So I'm going to ask you some yes and no reactions to the news, and we're just going to we're going to start with you and then come back this way. So the first question is, yes or no, would you keep Pedro Martinez in the role of CPS CEO?
I can't do a yes or no for that.
Okay. So Lamont, what about you, yes or no?
Would I keep Pedro Martinez as CEO?
Yes.
I would say yes, but I
Wait.
think.
Like, well,
I was gonna say yes, but.
This is a real trick question, and
Yes.
you're asking us to give a yes or no answer
know.
to. I'll comply with the instructions. Yes, I would keep.
Okay, so for another yes and no is, do you support taking out a high interest loan to cover operating costs at the district? Start with you.
No.
You?
No.
What about you?
I can't answer that question.
Okay, now you
Not
have
yes
30
or no.
seconds. Now you have 30 seconds to explain why you said, I don't know, for those two questions. Go ahead.
Okay, Pedro Martinez. The reason why it could be a yes or a no, because the contract that they're negotiating with CTU encompasses making sure that special education is on the table. It encompasses making sure that the principals have a union, and that's not on the table right now. That's not in the contract right now. So being that the principals are not being acknowledged to have their union, Pedro has to go for that. But his if he thoroughly looked over the money, this is going to answer both of them. If he thoroughly looked over that interest loan and saw that in the future that it does not benefit our children and will fall back on the taxpayers too hard, then that's where I give leeway, because if he's done his thorough research and that there's no state or federal funding that will supplement, then yes, he stays. But if he does not add the principal contract on there, if he does not add, hold on, I have notes.
It's okay, but
if he does not add the principal contract on there, if he does not add the affordable housing for the students, the homeless students on there, then he has to go.
You also said, Lamont, you also said yes, but to one of those questions. So
My yes, but was to keeping Pedro Martinez. To be quite honest with you, and I appreciate Ms. Thomas's answers, I think these yes or no's are way more nuanced than just a simple yes or no. But to my yes, but for Pedro Martinez, the reason why I say yes, but is because the CEO serves at the discretion of the mayor. And we evaluate his performance, his or her performance, but obviously that's somebody that the mayor would appoint and somebody that the mayor would bring on. So I want to make sure that whatever we're doing, that we're putting somebody there that's going to be consistent with what we're trying to do for CPS, but ultimately that decision is going to come down to somebody else. That's why I said yes, but. And also with the current financial budget crisis that's looming for CPS, I want as much stability as we navigate through that as possible, only because more instability compounded with that financial cliff that we're headed towards, it just doesn't spell the best outcome for the entire CPS district. So,
Mr. Lewis, you also said that this is complicated and wanted a little bit more time to explain your answer. So 30 seconds, can you do
I
that?
didn't know that you were going to give us time to explain, so thank you for
No
that.
problem. I know.
So here's my response to that. Yes, I recommend keeping the CEO for a lot of the reasons that my colleagues here stated. We're in the middle of contract negotiations, and it's important that this CEO, who has the best sense of the landscape, be involved in these conversations. He has to have the opportunity to demonstrate what he made commitments to many months ago. Last year, I heard him acknowledge to CTU President Stacey Davis Gate his commitment to partnering with the union to ensure fair and equitable contracts. So he has to be held accountable to that commitment. And we're in a really important moment in the city of Chicago where we're about to onboard this elected, by November, we'll have opportunity to elect 10 board members, so it will be a hybrid board. This is a really important moment, and so we need stability in the district. To that second question, no to the high interest rate loan, and that is also why I recommend that the CEO not be dismissed in this moment. Before he was the CEO of Chicago Public Schools, he was once the chief financial officer for Chicago Public Schools. And in that capacity, he has the best sense for how the budget for this district works. If he is recommending this is not a good investment, then we have to listen. If he has the insights as a finance expert, that gives me reason to want to hear from him as to why he's recommending that this is not a good investment.
Okay. What?
I was gonna say I didn't get the answer about the budget, but
I
mean
no,
about the loan.
I promise. It'll come up again, so
Okay.
we'll have some more time to do that, or you can answer it in this next question.
Sure.
Okay. So, in the future, the hybrid and eventually elected school board does have the power to hire, evaluate, and fire the CEO. What qualities or experience would you like to see the CPS CEO have? You could go first. You would go first.
No good deed goes unpunished. So what I would like to see from the CPS CEO, regardless of who it might be, I want somebody who has a dedicated understanding of what CPS needs overall, and that includes not just from a financial standpoint, but what we need at the most local level with our teachers, our schools, our local school councils, someone who has an understanding of Chicago. You know, as we sit here and discuss all of these different topics and issues, coming back to the CEO, it's very important that we have somebody who understands the makeup of CPS and the families who send their students to us. You know, public school is often the only choice for Chicagoans, so we need to make sure it's the best choice, and that starts with our CEO. So I want somebody who understands that the majority of CPS is black and brown. I want somebody who understands government budgetary finance and not just how to spend the money, but how to actually bring in revenue, because that's important with the $505 million budget deficit. And then I want somebody who, from a personality trait wise, I want somebody who will be accountable and looks forward to being held accountable by not only the board, but by the public. Those would be my top 3 traits.
How about you? What would you like to see, Lynette?
Like Mr. Williams here, I would like somebody that knows the makeup of Chicago, particularly the 9th District and the 10th District of Chicago, because those schools have historically been underfunded. Those schools have historically been looked over. Those schools have kids that don't know what their future holds. I would like somebody who is not afraid to go lobby in Springfield for the students, on behalf of our students. I would like somebody who's not afraid to speak up when you see some disparities and things like that. Someone will say, okay, this, like being transparent, this is why I'm not doing this, because I see this, and who can speak up and allude to the future. Someone who's active with the students too, and the community, to make sure that we're being in alliance with our community, our students, our LSCs, and letting people have a seat at the table, and not just being a face, but an active role model in that, making an active role in the school and CPS and the community that surround CPS. Like Mr. Williams, someone that's well versed in budgetary and finances. Just someone that actually cares about the students. And I know CPS is a business, but it's also a culture and a community. So I would like them to treat it as the community that it is.
Michael, what do you think about this question? What would you like to see in this CEO?
Yeah, what we need in the next CEO is someone who knows how to get results. And the results that I'm talking about are the academic performance results that our students need. Our students need someone who understands how to support them and how to drive the academic institution towards the outcomes that all of the parents across Chicago who entrust Chicago Public Schools with their children. We need someone who understands, yes, I agree with my colleagues, we need someone who understands the finance side of the business, that's fantastic, and someone who's invested in the success of our communities.
Okay. So the next question is, Chicago Public Schools is facing a projected $500 million deficit every year for the next 5 years. And that's before any added costs related to the teacher or pension union contracts that are currently being negotiated. How would you balance the district's nearly $10 billion budget? I'm sorry, that number still throws me off. I almost said million, and I know it's billion, but yeah. Would you like to answer that question, Lynetta?
Yes, first off, I would make sure that I want us to do an audit of CPS. It needs to be an independent audit of CPS to find out where the funds that are, it's a lot of funds. It's a lot of money that's missing that's not making sense. It's a lot of citizens that are paying $1,700 twice a year, and the schools don't look like $1,700 twice a year. I will ask for a moratorium on opening new charter schools because about a quarter of our CPS budget goes to new charter schools. So that will actually help increase that deficit, opening more schools. I would implore CPS to actually go into sustaining our schools that's here, doing things like for the environment around the school, having the kids go and clean up we used to call it in the Army company beautification. So I'll have the kids do company beautification just so they can have a sense of pride in their schools if we work on it together. I would implore the mayor and the aldermen that are giving TIF money to these major corporations and businesses to actually, let's get some of that money and make sure it's coming to our schools. Let's lobby the state to make sure that these businesses are paying their fair share and property taxes towards our Chicago Public School District. I will implore whoever's the next president to put it on their agenda for Chicago, because Chicago is the greatest city in the nation, and it's the example for the world. I've traveled all over the world, and when they think of America, they think of Chicago. And Chicago should be that example that is set for the world. So we should make sure we're doing things right because people are watching us. The world is watching Chicago.
Yes, we are a world-class city. Michael, since you've already been on the CBOE, have looked into this yourself, what are some ideas do you have about balancing this budget?
So first thing we need to do is evaluate the budget for where these dollars are being allocated. Of course, we know that with an institution the scale of Chicago Public Schools, salaries is the lion's share of the budget. Mm-hmm. What are those salary positions that might represent redundancies or inefficiencies? That's a place to start. From the salary position, then we can look at what additional programs, services, vendor partner contracts exist that might represent redundancies, inefficiencies, or let's call it plainly, just plain fat on the bone. There's some room, I believe, for us to evaluate our budget, our spending, so that we look at this budget for what it is intended to do, which is to ensure that our students receive the academic supports that can help them be successful. This is an organization whose primary and sole responsibility is to provide education to our children, and the budget should reflect that. If the budget does not reflect that that is the #1 priority, then those are spaces that we can determine what's necessary to support the priority and what's not necessary. So an evaluation of the budget to determine what aligns to the priority is the first step.
Lamont, did I get to you for this question? Okay, it's your time to answer.
Patiently waiting.
Okay, it's your time to answer.
So I sincerely believe that our budget reflects our priorities. But having served as Chief of Staff and General Counsel to Cook County Commissioner Bill Lowry for 6 years, my day-to-day preparation, my day-to-day activities as Chief of Staff is preparing commissioners' talking points in his preparation and analyzing not only the Cook County budget, which is identical in size to CPS's projected budget at $9.9 billion, but also the Forest Preserve's budget as well. Then they're 2 separate units of government. So I take that experience and I take it into account when I'm looking at what we need to do for CPS. And what we need to do for CPS is, I agree with Ms. Thomas, I think that we do need to do an audit. And the reason why I agree that we need to do an audit is because at the county level, one of the first pieces of legislation that I helped craft was the Good Faith Effort Transparency Report Ordinance. And what that did was it required that before any contract that was seeking a waiver for MBEs or WBEs or anything like that came before Cook County, and I'm talking about contracts where we're spending millions and millions for vendor services and goods, that we were fully briefed on these contracts so that we were not just the day of approving contracts that would go on for multiple years, multiple millions of dollars, which affects our budget. Additionally, I think that, and I could talk about this all day, so I'm gonna wrap it up, but additionally, I think that what we need to do is we need to hold the state accountable to follow its own laws. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm one of the only people talking about this, but there are monies that should be going to public education throughout the entire state, and we're not receiving it at the amount that we should, specifically the Illinois State Lottery net proceeds. We were supposed to get 100% of those. We're only getting 35%. Imagine a world where for CPS and our budget, if we received more than just 35% of those funds, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation about a $500 million to almost $700 million budget deficit. So I have a lot of, you go on my website, LamontRaymondWilliams.com, I have a lot of different proposals talking about how I think we can address this budget deficit.
Okay, shameless plug. So again, I'm gonna ask you all yes or no questions. Please don't bite my head off, okay? But yes or no, do you think the city should pick up part of the cost of non-teaching pensions as it has since 2020? That's the $175 million pension payment this year. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. What about you?
You said non-teacher pension?
Yeah, the non-teacher.
Yes.
Okay. Another one is do you think the state should provide CPS more funding? Yes or no?
Yes.
Emphatic yes.
Is it you?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so how would you all go about working with the state and other elected officials to get more funding for CPS? Lamont?
Want me to start first?
Yeah,
I'm gonna pick up where I left off talking about the lottery, and like I said, I've been talking about this since I jumped into this race. Right now, the law that governs how the lottery net proceeds are distributed throughout the state, there are at least 10, probably more so, different carve-outs that take from the Common Education Fund that should be going towards public education, which is why we only receive 35%. I would work with our state electeds, and I've already started having those conversations with our state reps and senators to close those loops. And what I mean by closing those loops, the money goes to some worthwhile things, but when you're looking at the totality of the situation, our greatest investment is our children. Our greatest investment is public education, because as I said earlier, for most Chicago families, public education is the only choice, so let's make it the best choice. We have to now, we're in a situation where, what is it, the third largest public school system in the nation is drowning. That's where we have to start telling our state, you have to prioritize the public education for CPS, and you have to do that by prioritizing our next generation of leaders, doctors, lawyers, and everything else under the sun by making sure that we close those loops. And I don't know what the lobbying was like in the past from CPS and how it was coordinated with other groups and coordinated with CTU and things like that. I'm sure they went down there guns blazing, but I think now we have a more targeted approach in saying, listen, we know where this money should come from the state, and it's not a matter of you owing us and us saying that, it's a matter of state law and closing these loops so that we get that funding.
Lynetta, what do you think?
I agree with Mr. Williams that we need to lobby the state and speak to our elected officials. Me being the president of Senate of Model Illinois Government, I've learned how to write original legislation, and I've even written original legislation and handed it over to senators in meetings. So I wouldn't mind writing the original legislation that makes sure it mandates the state to prioritize Chicago public school systems when it comes to our funding and the things that we're not getting and that the things that we are mandated by law. Just like we have the Chicago torture justice system. There's classes there that we're supposed to be taking when you're in school that teaches the kids how to engage with the police. That's not being done. I just want to make sure that we're making sure that things that are supposed to be for our kids, that's mandated, is getting done, and I will make sure. I'm the person that agitates state leaders. I'm a community organizer, so I know how to get in there, and I know how to get in their face, and I've been doing it for over 15 years, and I won't stop.
Okay, Michael, how would you talk to the state?
So this is a known. The state is aware that funding is not reaching the Chicago Public School District at its fair share rate. This is a known. Parents are the most powerful voices that we have to influence our elected officials, and so it's an opportunity. This is a real moment for us to create a coalition of our electeds, our school representatives, our parents, to lobby the state to do what's right. They already know that this is an underfunded district relative to other districts across the state, and they see that we're in a dire crisis. But what moves the needle is an amplified voice from the people who really matter to our electeds, and that's our parents.
Okay. Well, I have several more yes or no questions, but we're just going to focus with this one right now, and we're moving into school choice. So yes or no, do you believe any of Chicago Public Schools admissions policies should change? You can start, Michael. No? Was that a no?
I'm looking for Michael.
Oh, sorry, Michael. Sorry, I thought I said it. Michael.
I'm just teasing you.
I'm sorry.
So the question is, do any of our schools' admissions policies need to change?
Yes.
And my response is yes.
Okay.
My response is also yes.
And what about you?
Yes.
Okay. Since you all said yes, what would you like to see changed? I'm going to start again with you.
Of course. I believe that diversity is an important element to our development as a community, as a society. And that diversity, I believe, is an opportunity for our students to engage in through having open enrollment across the city for all schools.
Mark?
I would agree. I think as somebody who I spent my whole academic journey K through 12 going to the quote unquote selective enrollment and gifted programs, and that's part of my story that really influences me and influences why I'm in this race, because I had the best of CPS while my siblings who shared the same household as me did not. And it really came down to standardized testing and the different enrollment policies for the different schools. So what I would like to see is open enrollment. I would like to see that world-class education that we're trying to give to our students is available not only just in the selective enrollment schools, but in the neighborhood schools as well.
Lynetta, what do you think?
I agree that it should be equitable in the way that we do admissions because we have children like my daughter, she's autistic. She probably wouldn't pass the standardized test because she can't read. She has to have someone read to her. But she's a DAMN, good artist, right? So she can draw her butt off, and she's 10 years old, and she can sing her butt off, and she's a very good performing arts person, but she cannot read. And having a selective enrollment test that will count her out just because she won't pass that test but she'll be a very good student for them and anybody else. And she's brilliant in math that we just discovered, but we just discovered that. So just don't count kids out just because what they're alluding to. Actually test them on what they do know. Maybe asking them, what do you do? What do you know how to do? Where is your brilliance? Where does your brilliance lie? And that will make a difference.
Okay. The next question is, the Chicago Board of Education has taken steps in the past to end charter school contracts when schools are not performing well or have financial troubles. This most recently happened with Urban Prep, though a legal fight took place next. Are you in favor of ending charter school agreements, which sometimes lead to school closures? Lynetta, do you want to take that?
I don't understand the question for real.
Okay. I can repeat it if that makes sense. So basically, here we're talking about charter schools, and sometimes charter schools might have issues around their finances or how students are doing academically in those schools. The charter school networks or charter schools has a contract with CPS. Do you think that those contracts should be reviewed and taken action on if these things are happening? And sometimes that can lead to school closure if CPS was to end the contract.
I think that we do need to hold our charter schools accountable for the way they treat staff, their funding. That needs to be everything that we hold our public schools up to. Charter schools need to be held up to the same accountability as all our public schools. And yes, ending the school contract, but don't end it where the kids can't go to school. Bring CPS in there, because those are neighborhood schools that were taken away from the neighborhood. So you can close it from that charter school network, but that's an opportunity for some teachers that been waiting in this waiting list to come into a contract. You can add those teachers. There's principals that were fired from their schools unjustly. It's a lot of black men principals that were fired just because their schools were doing excellent, and that's the fact of the matter, that their schools were doing excellent, and it's a fact that they do not want to see black men thrive. If it's danger seeing black people being smart and thriving, and that's why I believe they fired a lot of these black principals, because they had black children going to college at numerous rates, great rates, and that was a problem. So yes, there's principals out there that can take over these charter schools and make it a sustainable public school like it used to be. So there's room for growth, and there's room to correct the actions of the past.
Mr. Lewis, what do you think about this question regarding charter schools?
Repeat the question. I want to be precise, please.
No problem. The question was, the Chicago Board of Education has taken steps in the past to end charter school contracts when schools are not performing well or they have financial troubles. This most recently happened with Urban Prep, even though there was a lawsuit that took place. Are you in favor of ending charter school agreements, which leads to school closures?
Thank you for repeating the question. So no, I'm not in agreement with ending charter school contracts, and here's why. Charter schools came online at a really important moment in Chicago public school history. The charter school movement filled a void. As we've all acknowledged, we want the best education for our children. Charter schools filled a void where students would not be able to access selective enrollment for a myriad of reasons. Either they could not test well, they did not live in the area of one of the higher performing neighborhood schools, they couldn't get access to a magnet school. Charter schools came at a moment where they were responding to the needs of the community and provided high quality education for those students who couldn't get access to the better performing neighborhood schools or selective enrollment schools. Why would we want to take those options away from our students and from our families? So no, I would not recommend that we end the charter school contract. Here's something that we all have to understand and be aware of. Charter schools are governed by our district, by the Chicago Public School District. There is an entire operation dedicated to ensuring that charter schools are held accountable. In fact, during my short term on the board, I observed how the district holds charter school networks accountable for their performance. And in some instances, it's far above and beyond how they might hold some of our neighborhoods accountable. The metrics that they hold charter schools to are metrics that are not parallel to the metrics that they hold neighborhood schools accountable to. So in that way, charter schools are doing more than is required for our neighborhood schools to support our students' success.
All right, Mr. Williams, what do you think about this question?
So this excellent question. I want to make sure that I acknowledge both the response from Ms. Thomas and the response from Mr. Lewis. And where I fall in the middle of both. So I do acknowledge that charter schools do fill a void. I grew up, lived the majority, if not all of my life in the 9th District. As a matter of fact, there's a charter school that replaced a Catholic school where I grew up on 88th and May. It's called Hansberry. And one thing I will say, though, is I think according to the last fiscal year budget for CPS, about 23% of CPS's budget goes towards charter schools. But we don't have any direct oversight over these charter schools. So what we have to do is, our oversight comes from renewing their contract. And like anything that we would propose as CPS, it's performance-based. We just had a question about our CEO. We just had the roles and responsibility of the board is to evaluate the progress of our students. That includes the charter schools. So I do believe we should terminate charter school contracts if they are not performing to the standard that we set. And I've had conversations with the Illinois Network of Charter Schools, and they agree. If they have underperforming schools, that they would move to close those schools. They would understand that that decision came down. So I don't want to take away the choice from parents of where they feel that they should send their students. Do not want to do that. Parents know best what their students need. But I do believe in accountability for everybody, not just for our traditional public schools, but for our charter schools too. And if you are a part of this CPS umbrella, which charter schools, they have their own oversight, but they're receiving a quarter of our budget, they're under that umbrella too. If our only oversight and our only way to gauge and make sure that they're providing high quality, world-class education to our kids is evaluating their performance and possibly terminating their contract, then I'm for that. And I believe that they would agree with me. Now, that's where I am on that issue, and I think that strikes a chord with where most of the parents are, who are both public school parents, traditional public school parents, and charter school parents in the 9th District.
Okay. I'm sorry. Because
I'm just saying I agree with parents still having that choice for their kids.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to move into equity. So the first question there is about English learners. As you all know, we have seen in our city a lot more newcomers coming into classrooms who need help learning English. But some of them are going to schools that do not have bilingual teachers or staff. What would be a short-term and a long-term solution to help English learners in schools? I'm going to go with you, Lamont.
Go with me first? Awesome. So, excuse me. Short-term and long-term, so 2 for 1 in my answer. We have to make sure at the CPS board level that we provide the funding and the adequate resourcing. We have to make sure that we are staffing all of these schools. I don't care what type of school it is. I don't care where they rank, if they're exemplary, if they're ranking towards the bottom. If you are a school that is absorbing students and you're acquiring students who are bilingual and they need those services, we have to make sure that we're providing the resources immediately to meet that need. Where that falls for us on the board, however, is our responsibility to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to adequately resource them. So I think in the short term, we need to increase the instruction level, that includes our teachers, our bilingual teachers, ESL teachers. We need to make sure that we are increasing them short term, but long term, fiscally speaking, we have to make sure that CPS remains I'm not gonna say remain because we're not there. We have to make sure the CPS gets to a place and then remains in that place where we can adequately fund those ESL services throughout CPS. And I'll add this before I conclude my remarks. Working at the county, one of the first things I realized when I worked here was there was a piece of legislation and a program that the late, great Karen Yarborough, former clerk of Cook County, where she went through and made sure that the ballots for folks to vote for throughout the county were translated into about, I think, 10 languages, probably more so, because we know that we have households and families where English is not their first language and Spanish is not their, the secondary language. We have a whole host of folks who speak anything from Polish, German, Spanish, French, Chinese, you name it. So I think as we see the diversity, and we all applaud diversity in CPS, as we see that continue to grow and be represented in our student population, we provide those ESL services.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about that, Lynetta?
I think in the short-term thing, so like we have colleges like Chicago State University, UIC, the city colleges that actually have post-secondary degree programs where they have teachers, right? They're student teachers. Just like nurses go on clinicals, the student teachers go on clinicals. We can get these students some training right in CPS. If we form coalitions and if we form, I can't even think of the word I'm trying to say, but if we do a cooperation with these schools like Chicago State, the City Colleges of Chicago, UIC, that have these classes and are teaching people how to speak these different languages, and they are in their advanced levels, they can come into the classroom and help the teachers and also get their due credit for their school for the time that they need for teaching aid anyway. So there's people out there that we can staff it with, and we can also make sure that those teachers that have those skills are fully staffed in the schools as well. And those teachers that want it, I believe the board should help pay for them to get those certifications.
All right. Mr. Lewis, your turn.
Yeah, so we're in a real moment of crisis to find the right resource for these young people to be successful. So we can't wait for the board to find the resources, to put those resources in the schools. We have to take action right now because there are students sitting in classes today who don't understand the instruction that's being provided to them. So I believe it's an opportunity for us to leverage partnerships across the city of Chicago. There are organizations that are either vendor partners or willing partners to support our students in the classroom. There are organizations that can come in to support translation services in the classroom right away. So we won't have to wait for the board to find the resources in the budget. Well, there's no finding the resources in the budget. We're sitting here acknowledging that there's a $300 million, $500 million, $700 million deficit. I guess it depends on which day of the week it is and who you're talking to, how much that deficit is, but there is a real deficit. So we can find the provider partners and collaborate. It's time to leverage partnerships.
Chicago is facing staffing shortages across the district. What policies do you support to recruit more teachers, including teachers of color? I'm specifically thinking of men of color, and educators in hard-to-staff fields such as special education. I'm going to start back with you, Mr. Lewis. What do you think about this question?
Where are we looking for these educators? Are we looking in the places where Black men, brown men, men who want to commit their careers to educating our students exist? We can start there. Those men exist. They're in our communities. There might be an opportunity for them to offer their services as a volunteer to understand the role of a teacher. That can then lead to a career as an educator. So we have to look more broadly than through the schools that teach our students to become educators. We look to the places where they are teaching economics or they are in the economics profession so that they can teach our students economics. We look to the places where these men are performing the skills of engineering and bring them into the classroom, where these men are performing the skills of computer science and data analytics and bring them into the classroom as a volunteer and on the pathway to profession in teaching.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Williams?
I think it's multi-layered. I think it's mentoring on top of mentoring on top of mentoring. I mentor young Black boys. That's what I feel I'm called to do. I want to make sure I get my arms around them and make sure that we're providing some type of structure for them, and I've been doing that since I came out of law school, and actually before that when I was an undergrad. The reason why I say mentoring on top of mentoring, what I see it as if we're trying to recruit more black men into the teaching profession? Well, every subject that you learn in school, you're being taught by somebody, so every subject that you're learning is a subject that you can become a teacher in that, specializing in that subject. So what we can do is we can do twofold. We have so many different colleges and city colleges and junior colleges throughout the city of Chicago where we can go in there and tap these gentlemen and say, hey, how would you like to come shadow at CPS? Because you may be pursuing your degree to go into some other field, because I'll be honest about my own personal journey. Before I chose law school, I was teetering on whether or not I wanted to be a history teacher. The teacher who wrote me a letter of recommendation to get into Loyola Law School wrote me a letter of recommendation to take a teaching program at University of Maryland. So I say all that to say we can mentor that way, but also a lot of these young men who may be trying to decide, I really gravitate towards this one subject in college. I really gravitate towards this one subject in my post-secondary career, but I don't see it. Most black men, they have to see it in order to believe it. What they see is what they'll be. That's one of the models for the mentoring programs I'm a part of. So we have to expose them to say, hey, you can use your expertise to be a conduit to pass this on to the next generation. And the teaching profession is a noble profession for you to pursue. So that's what I mean by mentoring on top of mentoring, because it's literally, if the ladder to success, don't pull it up, leave it down for the next person. That's how we have to do this in order for us to recruit in these different staffing shortages. We have to let them know that that's a possibility, and not only let them know it's a possibility, but show them the path to that possibility. And I think that's through mentoring, recruiting at our academic levels, passing it down.
Okay. Ms. Thomas, what do you think?
So I'll start out with the special education part of it because that's near and dear to my heart. I believe that there's a lot of parents that are without a job right now that would love to come in and help their child succeed in here. We have paraprofessional training that's happening all the time, and it's open right now for people to go and get paraprofessional training. It's open right now for substitute teacher positions right now. So we have to actually do a hard campaign on recruiting and alerting the community that those opportunities exist, and that also alleviates some of the poverty in our communities that we see because they will have a job. And educating the kids. We have to utilize the Grow to Your Own. There's a lot of alumni that come from all of our schools in our districts that are black and brown, and they went to school and they probably aren't even doing what they went to school for right now, but they can get a teaching certification and we can get them in their school and they can, and like you said, kids do what they see, and if we get those people that aren't in their profession right now, they went to school for music, went to school for arts, because those need to be back in the school too. I believe that's a very important profession. Music and art teachers are very important, and they're very important for black and brown students. Make sure that they can come back into the schools and teach our kids. Make sure that they know that we support them, because a lot of black people don't feel like they're supported in our world right now, and just love on our people for real. Like, that, for a lack of better words, we do need to love on our people and let them know that they're acknowledged. And teaching is usually a thankless job. As a veteran, I say it all the time, I can't believe that I make more than some teachers. I feel like teachers should be the highest paid, one of the highest paid professions, because they teach our future. There's no reason why a teacher is asking for the contracts that they're asking for right now. It's no reason. We need to pay the teachers. That's how you're going to get them in this school. Pay them. That's the truth of the matter. Pay them.
Real quick, 30 seconds or less. I just want to add on to, and I agree with you, Ms. Thomas. I just want to give a shout out to the Ladders of Opportunity program and the Ladders Up program that operate in the 9th District, and the 9th District being, 76% African American students, 80% black by identification for families. That is an excellent point that you made, and I agree with it. As far as providing those opportunities and what I said earlier about mentoring on mentoring, this is an opportunity for our black parents who represent our black students to be more involved and potentially delve into a career in teaching. So I just wanted to make sure we shout that out, because that's something that is operating within our district right now. So,
thank you for that. The next subject, we're moving into facilities and infrastructure. Now, this is a long question, so please bear with me. I'm gonna try my best to make it short. The district has seen modest enrollment increases in the last couple of years, but the overall number of students remain dramatically lower than it was a decade ago. And some schools serve a fraction of the students they once did, making it hard to provide a full slate of programs and support in the school. How should CPS balance its current enrollment with the hundreds of buildings CPS operates? I also just want to note, in our questionnaire with WBZ in Chicago, sometimes we asked you if you supported schools closings due to low enrollment, which is what this question is about. Lamont said no. Mr. Lewis, you didn't say yes or no there. I don't know. Would you like to start, Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, of course, I'd be happy to start. This is a really complex question because we're talking about, I believe the question asked, what would we recommend to balance the low enrollment with the number of vacant or under-enrolled school buildings? Is that accurate?
Yes, it's that.
I think this is a real opportunity. So where we might have low enrollment in schools is a real opportunity to innovate. And innovation is an opportunity for us to scale up something that has real potential for improved results for our students. I don't think that it's purposeful necessarily for us to close a school because of a low enrollment as much as it is purposeful for us to evaluate how effective we can be. That's something that I hear from parents and principals and teachers is that smaller class sizes is more favorable and conducive to students learning. And so in those spaces where there might be fewer students, that's a real opportunity to test that theory or to exercise some other practices that might yield improved results. And then that's the path towards scaling up those solutions for how we support our students and improve the academic results. So if we have vacant buildings, that's one thing, but if we have buildings that are still supporting our students, but there's lower enrollment, let's test some things to determine how we can support smaller class sizes, which is what teachers say that really supports our students' learning. Those vacant buildings can be repurposed. There might be a revenue opportunity in a vacant building. Let's explore how we can generate some revenue from those vacant buildings.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't think this question talks specifically or mentions vacant buildings. It's more about low enrollment in schools.
But I thought I heard you say a school that's facing closure or closed. I thought I heard you say a school that was closed.
Yeah. That
so
would
if
be
the school is closed, that's different,
yeah,
right?
that's different. So
but if it's facing closure, that means that there are still students being educated there, which again, I believe is a real opportunity for us to find the methods that really accelerate their learning, improve the academic results, because that's a smaller class size environment, which is what our teachers say that is really conducive to learning.
Okay. Ms. Thomas, what do you think about this question?
I believe that for our schools that's low enrolled, that we need to go into like schools like Harlan, for example, in the 9th district. It has 200 students, 250 students. Julian has 200, 250 students. We actually need to ask the students what they want. Like we have to involve students on their learning experience. Just like I'm a college student, they don't ask us what do we want for our student morale. So we have to ask the students, because when I went to Morgan Park, sitting there for my daughter to have a discussion with the principal, there was a child in trouble. I said, what's wrong? What's making you, I don't want to be here. Why don't you want to be here? It's nothing for me to do. What do you want to do? I want to do music production. Why isn't there a music production program at Morgan Park High School? Why isn't there cosmetology at Percy L. Julian? Why is there an automotive shop at Harlan? Did you ask the students what they want to do? Because if it's 250 students, that's less of a chance that they can actually go to college, because they're probably missing a core subject that will put them ahead of the other people on their application process, right? We have to stop putting JROTC in schools. Even though I'm a veteran, we have to stop trying to recruit our kids into the military. That's a problem. And we don't give them any options to excel but, oh, go to the military. I didn't go to the military because I wanted to be, to go to college or anything, or for them to pay for college. I went to the military because I didn't want to go to college, right? And so I need them to stop forcing our kids, you either are going to go to jail or you're going to go to the military, or there's nothing else left for you. Why don't we have vocational schools, vocational skills, CTEs for our kids in these schools that are underfunded and underutilized? It's 250 students that holds 2,000 students in the building. That's more than enough space to give these kids everything that they need, everything that they want, because it's a low enrollment. That means you have enough space for these kids to do what they actually want instead of you telling them what their opportunities are.
Lamont?
Could you restate the question?
Okay, this question is about how should CPS balance its current enrollment with hundreds of buildings CPS operate? So this one's about low enrollment
Versus what we're doing with the buildings.
with the buildings.
Yeah, so
yes.
we have numerous schools in CPS that are built for thousands of students, and we have, like Ms. Thomas just mentioned, Harlan and Julian, which are in the 9th district, that have between the two of them about 500 students. So what I've been telling folks that I'm running my campaign off of trying to put real solutions to problems, being pragmatic about it. These high schools, these middle schools, these elementary schools are the cornerstones of neighborhoods. They are landmarks in the neighborhoods. Folks who live in those communities know these buildings. So what I've been proposing is we have an opportunity here, and I think Mr. Lewis used the word innovate. We have an opportunity to innovate how we view these assets at CPS. Low enrollment, the reason why that becomes an issue, low enrollment for these buildings, isn't because there's just this cavernous amount of space and the kids aren't filling it up. It's because of the cost of running those schools without having the population in that school. So what we can do, what I've been proposing is CPS should start to vet local nonprofit organizations and issue rental agreements with these folks so that they can utilize the space when we're not utilizing the space. Now, obviously, Monday through Friday is school, but when there's times when those buildings are sitting vacant and we know that it costs a lot to run a CPS school, those giant buildings, HVAC, plumbing, all that stuff, it costs, right? And so if we're trying to offset that, because folks are saying we need to close it to consolidate those who are proponents of that, they're saying it from a cost perspective. So my solution then is offset the cost, and you offset the cost by bringing in these other organizations that are community organizations that can utilize the space, and CPS can recoup whatever this fear of loss is financially that we have. Also, the added benefit of that is you're now bringing a community element to these buildings and to these schools to where it's not just an elementary school. This is a piece of communal property now at this point that everybody has a buy-in, not just the kids who are attending school Monday through Friday, but folks who are now housing their nonprofits, housing their different programs that are now available throughout the community. So CPS is in a revenue, they're in a revenue situation where they are trying to figure out how are we going to be creative and address these needs, and which is why we had these discussions about schools. What we have to do is we have to be creative, but we have to maintain being a student first school district. But in our creativity, we have an opportunity to be innovative and bring in the community to have more buy-in into these spaces instead of just saying close them down because there's only 200 students in this space.
I have.
Got a minute and 48 seconds.
I got a minute, so I think we're gonna skip some of our questions and get to the last one. This one will be an easy one, and it's something about you all. So what's your favorite memory from school?
That just put a big smile on my face.
Okay, you go first.
I will go first. So I was born and raised in Auburn Gresham. Mm-hmm. I am a product of the CPS lottery system. So my neighborhood school was Mahalia Jackson on 88th and Vincennes, but because of the lottery, I got to go to Clissold. And I am the fourth of 5 kids, so all of my brothers and sisters went to Clissold once we got selected as a family in the lottery. So I just remember being so excited to go to Clissold because now I get to get on the big yellow school bus. I get to sit on the bus with my brothers and sisters and get to school. And I'll never forget my brother told me, you can't wait for hot dog day. I'm like, what is hot dog day? He's like, you're gonna love hot dog day. So my favorite memory is first grade, Clisso Elementary. So this had to be 1994. We had hot dog day, and it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. We got to run races, we won prizes, and it was probably one of the few times I can remember, or earliest times I can remember, that it wasn't just about school and the kids inside the building. The whole Beverly community and around Clisso came out to cheer on these little tiny kids trying to run and win races and have water balloon fights. And that's something that stuck with me to this day. And as a matter of fact, when I'm out door knocking and I'm campaigning in that area, I always remember that because my best friend from elementary school, from kindergarten, was the guy beating my first hot dog day race.
Mr. Lewis, what about you?
My entire high school experience was a fond memory. Made lifelong friends. My classmates and I played baseball, and those baseball teammates and I are still really strong friends to this day. It's the spirit of competition, and it's the spirit of being on a team and what your teammates need from you and what you need from your teammates to win that game. And throughout the 4 years that I attended the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences and that we played on this baseball team together, we committed ourselves to supporting each other. And just earlier this summer, we reconnected after a lot of years and just had a fond sort of walk down memory lane of our time as a baseball team together. So the 4 years I played baseball at the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences and the friendships that I made, and this. It is the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences, and so I was educated on floriculture, horticulture, and agribusiness, and I'm a kid from the inner city of Chicago. I would have never been exposed to those things if not for that education, and so I definitely hold that close to my heart that I had those experiences.
Ms. Thomas?
This was a hard question because I had so many fond memories in CPS because I went to so many different CPS schools. But my favorite, what will be my favorite because this is what influences me is music. My freshman year at Percy L. Julian, we got picked to go to the National Battle of the Bands in California, right? So my mom was like, I don't know how I'm gonna pay for this. Why would you say yes to going? I was like, Mom, we're going to Cali, because that was my first time getting on a plane. I was like, Mom, we're going to California. And Mr. Key was like, here, tell your mama to sell these. That's when taffy apples was the apple selling. My mama sold those apples. I was going anyway. He didn't tell them that we had scholarships. He just, we actually ended up getting scholarships to go because community was here for it to hear. A whole bunch of little black kids from Chicago was going all the way to California to represent the whole city of Chicago in the National Battle of the Bands. So she sold those apples. We got on that plane to California. And we showed out for Chicago, okay? And we had Earth, Wind, and Fire there. It was an amazing experience to see that coming from, I had just left Curtis Elementary from 8th grade. So coming from Curtis and Roseland in the neck of in the wild, wild hundreds to see California and win second place in the National Battle of the Bands, that's one, if all kids could experience a marching band and the soul of marching band, baby. Baby, I wish these kids knew what marching band used to be, for real.
Yeah. Well, that's our time. Thank you, Michael Lewis, did I get it right? Lynetta Thomas and Lamont Raymond Williams for joining us today. We appreciate you taking your time to be here. And thank you all for tuning in on Chalkbeat's YouTube channel to listen to our inaugural school board candidate forums and to learn more about the people running in Chicago's historic school board elections. You can find our voter guides and additional resources at chalkbeat.com/Chicago. Thank you again to our partners at Block Club Chicago, WBEZ Chicago, us and the Chicago Sun-Times for working with us to develop the voter guides. Special thanks to Tiona Van Gundy at Fueled Events for planning and hosting these events, and to BPM Films for video and audio production. And thanks to our engagement team at Chalkbeat, and to my peers at Chalkbeat Chicago. Our managing editors are Eric Gorski and Carrie Melalago. Our editor-in-chief is Sarah Darville. For Chalkbeat Chicago, I'm Samantha Smiley. Have a great day and happy voting.